It's a gloomy morning in Las Vegas. It's not 110 here. It actually rained last night and cooled things off, so that's nice. Today we're in another 6-liter early model JK. We got the new Banks gauge in here for you guys interested in getting one of those. It's pretty cool, and we're actually working with Banks to add some PIDs, especially for the LTs, some manufacturer specific PIDs and code fetching for our conversions, so keep an eye out for that. I received feedback from guys that last video I did in the 6.2 LS helped them sort it out, so I thought I'd do a quick video on the LS 6.0. So unlike the LS 6.2, the LS 6.0 has a direct predecessor, and that would be the early LQ motors from Gen 3. They didn't have the 6-speed transmissions, they didn't have variable valve timing, they didn't have a lot of the technology that the Gen 4 engines had. In 2007-ish, GM offered the LS 6.0 LY6. The LY6 was a heavy-duty truck engine. Iron block, aluminum heads. It was designed to haul basically their heavy-duty trucks. So if you didn't get a half-ton truck or SUV, you probably got the 6-liter unless you got a diesel. So if you got a 1-ton truck with a diesel, you didn't get the LY6. But if you wanted the gas motor, the odds are you got an LY6. And I'm going to mention another engine, but it's kind of obscure, the LC8. The LC8 was essentially identical to the LY6, but it was designed for multiple fuels. In the heavy-duty trucks, guys were running natural gas, propane, whatever. So they basically took the LY6 and they put some non-corrosive hardware in it for the alcohol content and some other things. But you can run the LC8 just as easily as you can run the LY6. So the LY6 was an iron-blocked LS engine, Gen 4. It ran the E38, it ran the E67, and I do believe it ran the E78 ECM also. GM knew that these trucks were going to be subject to abuse. Guys were going to take these 10,000-pound trucks on long grades and floor them. So they had a higher duty cycle than the regular half-ton engines, which meant you were at a higher throttle position more of the time. Because face it, if you floored a 6.2, even for just a couple of seconds, you're going really fast. If you're going up a grade with a 6.0 and a 10,000-pound garbage truck, pretty much got to almost keep it floored to get up that grade at 70 miles an hour. GM went very conservative on the tune. The compression ratio was lower. The combustion chambers were designed for this engine so you could run lower grade fuel. The tune was not aggressive at all. The PE was high. That's performance enrichment. That meant when you get on it, it would go into an open loop mode and put more fuel into it to protect the engine, because you don't want your engine to go lean, especially if you're in the throttle for long periods of time. Spark timing was backed off on the lower grade fuels, but this engine, like I said, had a high duty cycle, and you don't want to be flooring an engine constantly that's knocking. The LY6 was put into the heavy duty trucks in the mid-2000s, 2007 and 8. It was mated to the 6L90 transmission. The 6L90 transmission is essentially the heavy-duty version of the 6L80 transmission, and it's good for a lot of torque. We don't need that in a JK. Even if you got 40-inch tires, the 6L80 will handle it. Now, if you got a supercharged LS9 and 42-inch tires, yeah, go for the 6L90. We've actually used the 6L90 in some of the high horsepower builds, but in general, the 6L80 does a good job. The 6L80 is smaller, it's more compact, and it runs a more traditional output shaft. The output shaft in the 6L90 is huge. I think it's 1 5/8 inch, so it's harder to find adapters for it. Also on the 6L90, you might want to note that the 2-wheel drive and the 4-wheel drive have a different output shaft spline. We only support the 4-wheel drive, and as far as I know, so does everybody else. We do offer the 241J input gear for both the 6L80 and the 6L90, but again, we prefer the 6L80. The LY6 had the same early issues that the LS 6.2s had, and that is the goofy operating systems and modules. It ran the earlier map sensor from the Delco. It had the same T43 controller, so try to stay away from those engines. In 2010, GM upgraded the LY6 to the L96, and essentially it got the same upgrades as the 6.2. We went to the new Bosch style map system. We went to the new 238 ECM, or it's an E38 controller, but the service number ends in 238. The T43 was updated to the 10 and up TCM. It was just an easier engine to work with all around. The L96 added flex fuel to the LY6, just like the L94 and the L9H added flex fuel to the L92. The L96 was such a popular engine that GM essentially made it all the way up through 2020. Now GM cranked these things out by the million. They were readily available. They were available directly through GM parts, and we bought a ton of them. Abruptly last year, GM just dropped production of the L96, which was kind of a surprise because we were so reliant on that as one of our standard conversions. GM does have the replacement for the L96. It's the L8T, which is the new LT 6.6 liter, and we're going to get into that later. So the L96 was an excellent engine, and it still is an excellent engine. The problem is supply. Once GM dropped production of that engine, the demand remained because it's an excellent engine for conversion. And not just for Jeeps. Guys were putting them in Camaros and everything else, and they were changing the heads out and doing all sorts of stuff. Some guys think the iron block is stronger. I have to say, if you're in a really cold climate, the iron block might be a little more stable. But honestly, we've never had issue with even the aluminum motors. A lot of guys question what tune do we run in a 6-liter. Well, we ran a 6-liter tune just as it came from GM for many years, but we discovered that by putting a half-ton tune in a 6-liter can really wake it up. What I said about the spark timing being conservative, the PE being excessive, by going to an L9H or an L94 tune, that's the 6.2-liter LS, you can really wake up a 6-liter. You can pick up 20, 30, maybe more horsepower, better throttle response, and you pick up fuel economy. The 6.2 tune, being subject to stricter emissions regulations and operating in a lighter duty vehicle, meant that GM could get more power out of it per cubic inch. So putting that tune into a 6-liter just makes sense. When you put an LS 6.2 tune in a 6-liter, it wakes it up, like I said, and it makes the 6-liter perform very similar to the 6.2 off the line. Because of the VVT and the other features GM included in the 6-liter for bottom end torque, that means that the 6-liter has good bottom end pulling power. That makes the 6-liter a good candidate for heavier JKs or JKs with larger tires. That's where the 5.3 LS really has its limitation. The 5.3 LS is an excellent engine, but it's smaller cubic inches. And in order to haul a lot of weight efficiently, the more cubic inches, the better. The LS 5.3 is excellent in a light JK or a JK with 33-inch tires, maybe 35s. But once you go beyond that, you got a heavy JK, you're going to be towing, you want to step up to the 6-liter or the 6.2. Traditionally, the LS 6.0 has been our expedition engine, and the engine that guys go for if they want more than the 5.3, but they don't really think they need the 6.2, and you know if you're one of those guys. The LS 6.0 will get the job done. It'll wheel all day. It's about the most reliable engine that you can get. The LS 6.0 has been very popular in engine conversions because of the lower cost and the more than adequate engine performance. When I say lower cost, that's changing. It used to be that we could pick up new and used 6-liters for a very good price, and that's just no longer true. The price in some cases has doubled over the last couple of years, and that's also true with the 6L80. The core price of a 6L80 has shot up, so the LS 6.0 isn't the value it used to be. It's still an excellent value when you compare it to some of the other conversions, but it's just not what it was. The new king of the value swap, I think, is going to become the L83 LT. The L83 LT has very similar performance to the 6-liter, in my opinion. When you combine that little 5.3 with 11-to-1 compression, direct injection, CVVT, with an 8 or a 10-speed transmission, it's really a powerhouse, and in a lot of cases will outperform the 6-liter. Now, it doesn't have the simplicity of the 6-liter, it doesn't have the iron block, and some of the other attributes that guys are looking for expedition. But it's going to be probably one of the best value swaps out there, and it is proving to be very popular. I get the question almost every week, do I want an LS 6-liter or an LT 5.3? A year ago, it would probably be the 6-liter because of the cost, but now that the price of the 6-liter has risen, it's probably apples and oranges. One big advantage of the LT is they're available new from GM in a crate at a reasonable cost. The LS 6.0 is not. So the odds are, if you want to get a value swap, you're going to have to get a used engine. And the 10, 12, 20,000 mile engines are pretty much gone. Because the 6-liter has been out of production, we're seeing higher mileage engines going for more money. So that market is degrading at this point. If you can get your hands on a good low mileage 6-liter, grab it. I will say that the longevity on the 6-liter is excellent. I've seen these engines go well over 300,000 miles with minimum maintenance. So if you were to get an engine with 40, 50, 60, 70, I've seen guys pick them up with 100,000 miles, that engine still has a lot of life left in it. If you've got an Expedition JK, a heavy JK, a JK N40s, and you want good power at a good price, 6-liter has long reigned amongst the LS engine as the engine of choice for a good value conversion. I've often said that if I had to have one engine to cross a desert or a tundra, it would be the 6-liter. It has proven an extremely reliable engine. The question now becomes, do I get the 6-liter or the easier to source L83? We just bought a bunch of production L83s from GM because we're gearing up to do these LT swaps. Does it mean we don't like the LSs? No. It's just business, supply, and demand. If we can get the new L83 at a good price and pass that along to our customer and mate it to a high technology 8 or 10-speed transmission, we're going to do it. It doesn't make the 6-liter obsolete. It just means that we have to move forward with what's available to us. I got to say, after driving some L83s on these 500 to 1,000 mile trips, it's a fantastic engine. It's got plenty of power, good throttle response. One of the things you're going to notice about the direct injected LTs with the high gear transmissions is the throttle response is always instant. You give it throttle, it always goes. The LSs are miles ahead of the old 350s with 3-speed transmissions, but you definitely notice that little bit of zip in the LTs that you don't have in the LSs. We have a LS7 in the shop with a 5-speed. Yeah, it's got the Chrysler 5-speed. We might do a video on it. And the guy's big complaint isn't the engine, it's that the transmission sucks. And the transmission is a really big part of your engine conversion. So you can have a 500 horsepower LS7, but you may not like the way it runs with a 5-speed. And we've actually performed several LS 5-speed conversions to LS 6-speed conversions just so the customer could get the GM transmission. In addition, we've actually done, and we're doing now, a couple of LS 5-speeds to LTs. If you do the 6-liter conversion, get into L96. The LY6 isn't a bad engine, but you have the same caveats that we have with the LS 6.2. Get an L96 from 2010 to about 2020. An interesting fact about the LS 6.0 is GM didn't drop it when they dropped the rest of the LSs. In around 2014-15, when the LT was introduced, the LS engines started dropping off production, but not the L96. GM didn't have a heavy-duty iron-blocked replacement for the L96, so they kept it in production in 15, 16, 17, 18, and up. That's why those engines were available to us. If you get a Gen 5, I call it the Gen 5 hybrid L96 because GM didn't want to keep manufacturing the older modules, so they upgraded the L96 to the newer E92 controller, which is the Gen 5 controller. In order to do that, they had to replace a couple of parts, including the throttle body. So if you get an LT-based L96, be willing to swap the throttle body out. They're really inexpensive. I think you can pick them up for under $100 off Amazon new. And that's about it. You can't use the electronics or the harnesses, but we supply all that in the kit. Other than that, the LT L96 integrates perfectly into our conversion. So we're going to hit the mountain with this L96 and we'll